Well, welcome everyone to another episode of the Hector Mike Experience, Common Sense in Uncommon World. And I mean, what a whirlwind it has been. We've got four different topics we want to talk about today. We want to start off with basically Donald Trump is breaking stuff. I mean, the guy is just going out there and the guy's on fire. He comes also to Los Angeles and lays down the law. The third thing we want to talk about is immigration officials are now out in force. And there's a lot of people, well, not a lot of people. There's some people that are unhappy. There's a lot of people that seem to be very happy with this. And then the other thing, too, is California has now begun to try to Trump-proof itself, but it can't seem to answer questions as it goes into the committee hearing. And I think we start off with kind of the main topic itself is, man, Donald Trump is just, I mean, he just seems on fire right now. All the different executive orders, Mike, it's crazy.
It's called Trumpapalooza. Trumpapalooza 25. It's here. You asked for it. Now, this is the key. You asked for it, and you got it. So be happy, everybody. It's here. Trumpapalooza's in full force.
Well, he's done these executive orders, right, making energy a national emergency. He's gone the executive orders on immigration. He's done the executive orders on DEI. He's gone over and said, okay, there's two genders. I mean, it seems like there's just this flurry of stuff and it's only been a week. I mean, it's only been a week.
All right. So here's what you need to understand. And this is why hopefully people tune into the Hector and Mike Experience, because there's some experience besides Hector and Mike. This has been in the works for 7-8 months. I mean, I remember being on a phone call in March or April where we talked about an executive order that would revoke government's involvement in voter registration, which was started under Biden-Harris, because the federal workers are not there to register voters. Mm-hmm. They're there to provide services in whatever department they're in, whether it's veterans, HHS, SBA, whatever. And basically I wrote that executive order maybe 6-7 months ago.
Oh, good Lord.
and then sure enough, it shows up as one of the executive orders that he signed, rescinding a bunch of Biden executive orders.
Right.
So all of this stuff has been very well planned. What you're seeing now is an execution phase of this.
Right.
And so, when people say, oh, they're just sitting there dreaming this thing up. No, it's been in the works, and very smart people have been looking at this from not only the policy side, but the legal side. What you have right now is a disconnect in the sense of executive orders are being put out and the people that have to implement them aren't quite sure of what they fully mean or the extent of it. And so that causes confusion. But none of this should be a surprise, and none of the things that he's doing should be a surprise, because he talked about it over and over and over, in 2 and 3 hour speeches sometimes, over and over and over about what he was going to do.
Yeah.
And shock of all shocks, he's doing them. And I think for the most part, people have wanted to see that. They wanted to see, some of this accountability. Certainly, probably the thing I would say that's the overall driving thing is America first. Mm-hmm. Whether it's on immigration, whether it's on tariffs, whether it's on DEI, it's putting America first. And one of the things that I think people seem to forget, they all kind of focus on the DEI stuff. The DEI stuff doesn't mean that, someone is discriminated against because of their sexual preference. It just means we're not going to be spending extra money of taxpayers' dollars on something that promotes DEI or puts people in places because of, who their preferred gender is or who they, preferred sexual partner is, which is what we've had the last 4 years. And people said no to that. They want government to take their thumb off the scale and treat everybody equally, not with equity, but equally. Big difference. So I personally am enjoying it because this is what people voted for. this is, you know, he won the electoral college, he won the popular vote. This is what, and he didn't, you know, there was no secret to it. And he said this is the stuff he was going to do. I mean, I got to tell you, I watched Tom Homan this morning,
Mhm.
the border guy, and you know, they were asking about, I think it was a Selena Gomez or somebody
Yeah.
was crying about all these kids and all this other stuff, and he's like, no, we're not doing that. We're arresting people that have criminal records, you know, child rapists and murderers and drug dealers, and you know, and then I saw JD Vance on Sunday. They asked him, because JD's Catholic, you know, what did you think about the church saying
Mhm.
this is a terrible thing, going into churches? And he said, hey, if you had a murderer or a child rapist in your church, um, you know, you'd want them out of there. Why is it any different if they happen to be an illegal immigrant and a murderer and a rapist? So, you know, it's nice to see after 4 years of the other side force feeding stuff onto the American people rising up back and saying enough is enough.
Hey, Mike, I know, I know you're heavily involved and you've been involved, which has made this podcast really neat because over the last several years, I mean, you were part of the first administration. I mean, you worked at the Republican National Committee that helped get him elected. I mean, really helped, everyone there helped turn the RNC around, got back in control of Congress. Then the efforts getting Trump elected the first time. Um, and you were part of that administration. Now you've been helping out with the think tank. You've been helping out, I know,
And the transition.
transition. Yeah, helping with people coming into transition. Now, one of the things that I had, I had the privilege of going over to the inauguration, and in talking to some people there, I brought up this particular issue is, and we see it especially in this first week. Do you think that he would have been this quick with all these different policies moving on day one had he won re-election the first time around? Or does it seem now that he had a couple, almost lost his life? He had 4 years to go back into the wilderness, and this idea of you go back there, kind of regroup, your team goes at regroups, come up with this think tank, you guys come up with all these different policies. I mean, and the way I mean, the first 7 days have started, or 6 days have started. I mean, it is just gangbusters. I
Hmm.
mean, do you think that would have been different had he won re-election? Because the first time around, it seemed like there was a disconnect. People going back and forth, not really knowing what policy. It seems like it was chaotic, but now, I mean, it just seems organized.
Well, just to do the history part, in 2017 when they went in, the analogy that I use is people went in on day one and they're looking to figure out how to use the copy machine and what the code was for the men's room or the ladies' room. Um, and that's literally where they were. Because when I went in, it was in April of 17. And even then, you know, 2 months, 2.5 months after the swearing in, there was still a lot of understanding everything. I don't think it would have been the same if he had gotten reelected in 2020, mainly because there was still the number one issue he had to deal with was the pandemic. And so that was still sucking up a lot of time. And then we saw the second wave of the pandemic hit um, during the course of 2021, the rollout of the vaccines and all that kind of stuff. What what they did that was so critical, I think he did and set the tone for it, was yes, he's going to run for president, but he also made sure that there were people in his circle, as well as other groups and organizations that were working on the policy changes that needed to be made. Because, you know, most of this stuff that we're seeing is a reversal of what has happened over the last 4 years. And so, and it's just not someone sitting having an idea that says, well, we should roll this back. It's like, okay, what should it actually say? Who should it actually impact? And then running it by a series of attorneys to make sure that it's actually going to be holding up in a court of law. So it takes a lot of forethought and work for that. And I think being out and not having to deal with the everyday things help make that happen. the thing I'm most impressed with is the execution. The biggest difference that I see between the first time and the second time, and granted we're only a week into this, is the direction that's coming from the White House specifically about policies. They are driving the agenda. We didn't see it that much in the first term, but this time there's a team in there that is absolutely driving the policy agenda, and they're doing it from when the bell started at 12:01 last Monday. And I don't think it's going to stop. I mean, I think they're going to be, this is the first wave. These are the things that have been the most or the greatest priority during the campaign, immigration, that kind of stuff. I don't think it's going to stop. I mean, I think it's going to keep going further and further down into the weeds. So you're going to see a lot more of that. What's interesting is so far in a week, I checked this out, he's done 35 executive orders. In the first 100 days of the Biden administration, Biden did 60 executive orders. So, you could see how quickly that 60 is going to get surpassed, probably by the end of this week,
Yeah.
with these things. And again, a lot of them are reinforcing what he had promised during the campaign and undoing what had happened over the last 4 years. So the wild ride has just started. So I mean, it's like you get on the roller coaster at Six Flags, and it's like, whoa, 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 I mean, this is you just did the first turn, baby.
Yeah.
You still got the death drop and the deep water drop and everything else coming. So
Well,
have fun.
well, in kind of in light of that, I'll go to our second topic, which is the wildfires, but really, focus on Trump. He gets inaugurated on Monday. By the end of the week, he makes his way over to Los Angeles. He went to North Carolina and then went to Los Angeles. And it's been a long time since I've seen someone who can sit down and just hold a press conference. I mean, he got off the plane, was greeted by the governor. They both had some, president spoke, had some nice things to say, said, we're going to fix this and we're going to fix it in a way where we're not going to deal with this again. And then he graciously asked the governor if he wants to say a couple words. The governor does. And they shake hands and they kind of go and start and do a tour. And then I think what I found really, really just the difference. He then goes and holds a town hall, basically, sits down there is a couple of congressional members, Democrat and Republican. There's the mayor of Los Angeles. And in the crowd, there are people who lost their homes and they're reporters. And it is just an open question back and forth. But the thing is that, the guy was just absolutely focused. I mean, he had heard that there was, from the Los Angeles Department, that they said it was going to take 16 to 18 months for people to kind of return to their homes and start building, because it was going to take that long of a time to remove the debris, to assess the situation. And he goes out and just right there from the principal was like, look, I've got executive powers. Looks over at the mayor and says, you've got executive powers. 16 months, 18 months is way too long. Get it done now. Use these executive powers. Let people go back into their homes. Let them start bringing in folks and get rid of this debris. It was surreal. And he pushed back on the mayor and took charge. He pushed back on the congressional members and said, look, the insurance problem that you're having here in California, you've had this problem for a while and you guys have made it worse. And you've got a lot of insurance companies that have left the state and you guys need to fix it. But it was, like I said, he just seemed like it was a damn continuation of the inauguration and the campaign. And it was just interesting to see.
What was interesting was the dynamic when he got off the plane and Gavin Newsom's pointing at him. And I thought, honestly, I thought that was pretty rude. I don't think you do that to people. But before he went there, he went to North Carolina, and that was important because North Carolina had significant flooding, as we all saw in Asheville and in the western part of North Carolina. And FEMA did a terrible job at helping those people out. For the most part, people were helping themselves. They were saving themselves, or other people were coming in to rescue them. Churches, independent organizations, were sending, food and clothing and toiletries and stuff like that up in caravans up to Western North Carolina. Where was the federal government? I
Mm.
mean, people were asking, where was the federal government? So I think the first thing he did that was smart is he went to North Carolina first and made it clear the last group screwed this up. We're not going to screw it up. We're going to take care of it. And I think that was important for him to do that, and it was smart for him to do that. Then he comes here, and what you saw here was what I would call Trump unburdened.
Yeah.
He's not burdened by, what is someone in Washington going to say? How are the optics are going to look? Oh no, don't get in front of the press and start talking to the press because you might say something that's going to piss people off. Well, if he doesn't, then you got a news story that he didn't piss people off. So,
Yeah.
you're going to piss people off. That's what they expect. He was comfortable in his own skin, is what you saw, as opposed to the others like Karen Bass, who were completely uncomfortable, and as a result, were overwhelmed. They did not have that kind of confidence you would expect from the mayor of Los Angeles.
Hmm.
She was timid. She was defensive. Um, and even Newsom, I mean, the same kind of thing. It's ironic he's working on legislation to Trumpify California, and on one hand, and on the other hand, he's holding it out, saying, help me. And so Trump was in great form in doing that, and I just think it's really is an indicative thing of things to come. He's a different guy than he was in the sense of he's unburdened, he's unchained, he's not gonna be handled like some tried to do in the first administration or during the course of the reelection campaign. He's not going to be handled. He's got people back in the home office that know what they're doing, that have a great sense of discipline, and are not about and don't really tolerate very well grandstanding, showboating, and stuff like that you saw in the first administration from his own people. That leaves him free to be who he is, which is a force of nature.
Well,
And
and you're right, and that really showed. That really showed in that press conference. I mean, he was taking questions from different reporters. He took questions from residents, and you could get a sense of, like, he goes, look, we need to rebuild. You need to get into your home as soon as possible. And he looks over at the mayor and says, no, this 16, 18 months is way too long. And she goes, no, we haven't said. And she goes, he just told me right there. And the videos come out later that, yeah, the department, the LA City department, one of the departments, had said, yeah, it's going to take about 18 months to clear up the debris and get people to build back in. And it's kind of that quickness, that speed, that let's just get things done now, and we're not going to wait. And
right.
I think it was a big relief for a lot of folks there who'd lost everything.
Hmm.
And what we saw is, so that was on I think it was on a Friday, right?
Friday.
We saw there yesterday, now on a Monday, that people were allowed back in,
Hmm.
and they were allowed to go in. They had to they had to wait in line to make sure that they live there. And the message was, you can bring your contractor, you can bring other people there, so that you can start looking at how you're going to rebuild, if you're going to rebuild or sell, whatever it may be. But it's just this 16-month wait, at least for right now, has been eliminated. And at the same time, you've got Gavin Newsom that goes out and issues an executive order on the Coastal Commission, basically saying, hey, you're not going to hinder or make it more difficult for people to rebuild. So a lot of things seem to be moving, but I think, as you mentioned, he's become this force of nature, which he's taken a lot of people with him, whether they want to or not. And it's really been neat to see. And I go back to something we said earlier, or discussed earlier, that I don't think that this would have happened the way it's happening had he won re-election. I think this pause in his administration, I mean, brought in some great people, and things are just kind of moving, and they're jamming right now.
Yeah, it's a difference between motion and progress. Sometimes in government you get a lot of motion. Well, we're going to study this, we're going to do that. This is progress. This is shit getting done.
Right.
And that's what you saw. And what you saw with Karen Bass is, not to jump on them, but it is typical government. Someone says, oh, it'll take 16 months. And so the leader says, okay, well, it takes 16 months because the expert said, as opposed to saying, okay, if you're the expert and you say 16 months, I'm going to find another expert that can do it in 10. That's private sector as opposed to government.
Mhm.
And remember, this guy's a builder.
Yeah.
He knows how to he knows how to do this stuff. So and he brings that experience to the table, and it shows. It also showed, I think, a connection that he had with people in the sense of you would never, ever, ever, because remember, everything is compared to something else.
Mhm.
You would never, ever, ever have seen that kind of free flowing, unscripted, unprepared, sit down, talk to the press, and talk to people who have been impacted by the fires by the former president or vice president of the United States. It would be completely scripted. It would be everybody's vetted. Nobody gets in without you knowing what the question was going to be. I think that's the other thing people saw that was a huge difference, which is someone that was in command was not afraid of being out there on a high wire, and was very direct, no word salads, unburdened by the fires that had been or whatever, and cut straight to the point. And that's another thing for people to remember is, especially now at this stage, there is always a comparison of what you just had.
Right.
As the term goes further in, there'll probably be less of that. But right now, there is a huge comparison over what was here before. And what you saw there and what you saw before, night and day. Night
You
and
keep
day.
on using this word burden, and I want to go and say he is unburdened by what has been the whole Kamala thing, right? Or comments on that. But
Yeah.
it's yeah, and getting into like our topic, our third topic, I use the word force, and it's like, I mean, one of the other areas and one of the big areas that's gotten quite a bit of news has been, these his immigration officials are like out in force. In less than a week, you've got ICE that has arrested thousands of people nationwide. The agency, not only are they publishing these updates on social media every single day, but they're also having like reporters, national and local reporters that are being embedded as they're going out there so that they can say, hey, here's who we arrested. We arrested this guy who's got 17 charges against him. We arrested this person who's been, for raping a child and for, drug selling. And so, and so now we're going to deport him. They make sure they go out there, and they've been going to all these different major cities, and they point out that, look, they've been arrested before. We asked for a detainer, but then they got released back into the community. And so we're going wherever we need to go get these individuals. And while there have been some Democrats and there have been some people that are saying, woe is me for some of these folks that are getting arrested, they're doing a very good job of pushing back and saying, look at all these crimes that these people have, and we're going to put them on a plane and we're going to get them out. And within 2 days, you saw there were planes getting people out, sending them back to their home country. And they had a little spat this past week with the Colombian president when, they were sending out the planes. And here's a part of the organization that, of just being absolutely disciplined. Once the president of Colombia said, we're not taking any planes of Colombians who are illegal in the United States and, they're citizens, Trump goes out there and says, great, you got 25% tariff, and I'm revoking all your government visas. And at the same time, you've had appointments for people wanting visas to come to the United States. Those are gone. And if you don't, and if this thing isn't settled in a week, the tariffs go up to 50%. I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And
No.
the thing got settled in 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And the Colombian president said, tell you what, I'll even send my plane to go get them. It's just crazy.
Promises fulfilled. That's what it is. They said they were going to do it, and they're doing it. And the best part is, like you said, no apologies. There's always the guilt trip, and there'll be the stories. Oh, little Mary got separated from the family, and you see them on the TV, and the question is, well, you came across the country across the border illegally. You got people in the household that are convicted felons. You're exposing your little Mary to these people, and somehow you're an angel, and the people who are protecting our country are the devil. Doesn't
Right.
work anymore. They have completely, from a communication standpoint, they have completely flipped the narrative on
Mm-hmm.
all of this. It is no longer a cover up posture. It is now a no holes posture, and out there just doing what they said they were going to do, and and backing it up, like you said, with of course, immediately when that happened, my wife got on Amazon and started ordering coffee like crazy because we figured the
That's funny.
price of
Yeah.
coffee was going to go up. But it still may. But in case anybody needs coffee, we're well stocked here. Um, we have no food; we just have coffee. But it's the kind of thing that you look at and say, "Yeah, that's what we're supposed. That's what
Yeah.
if you want your country to be strong and to be great, that's what you want to see them do. You want to see them, if this is what their policy is, we're a democracy. If this is what the people voted for, then you want to see your government do that. You want to see them do that well, and you want to see them do that effectively. And you don't want to see them apologizing while they're doing it. And that's what makes America strong, and that's what puts America first. No one wants to break up a family. But the
Mm-hmm.
fact of the matter is, if you have people here illegally who have committed crimes in other places, then you do put America before these families that are here illegally, and you say, out the door with these people. And there's no apologies to it. That to me is not only the effectiveness of what they're doing, but the fact that they're unapologetic for it, I think is the best part.
Well, and the
Because
other thing,
once you start to say, well, we're really sorry we have to do this. No, I mean, we didn't decide that you would come here illegally. We didn't decide that it's okay for someone who's committed 3 murders or a member of a gang to be here. You all decided that yourself. Now you take the consequence for it, and the consequences is you go back home.
well, and the other thing too that has struck me is how disciplined they are in some of the messaging that's coming in from the officials. I mean, whether it's J.D. Vance or Holman or even Trump. I mean, you had the Catholic Church came out, on this issue of immigration, and was kind of said, hey, we got to protect the immigrants and so forth. And Holman comes out, I mean, just quick and says, hey, the Vatican Church has a wall around it, and if you climb over the wall, try to get in, he goes, there's some dire consequences. So why can't we go out and also defend this country and prevent, illegal aliens from coming in?
Right.
And to that point, I mean, from day one, it's like, okay, we're bringing out the military to go help provide support over for border agents. At the same time, there was a notice over to the Coast Guard saying, hey, in the past, you've turned a blind eye to all these different boats or little boats that come in through the coast, a lot of them landing in Orange County,
Hmm.
and said, no more. You're going to go out there and you're going to find them and you're going to prevent them from going in, and you're going to arrest the individuals, and we're going to get them back to their country. And so it's, the interesting part too, Mike, is, I was watching the news this last day or two in Latin America, and there's a big caravan that's making its way through Latin America. It's headed to the border, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens when you have a couple thousand. It depends on how many more people they pick up, obviously, along the way. But let's say you've got a couple thousand people that come to the border. You've got it now fortified. You've got the military, and let's see what happens once they reach the border. I've got to believe that the number of people that have been crossing through the border under the Biden administration. I mean, I've seen some of the numbers now. This thing is just like nothing now.
Oh, it's crashed. I forgot. I think it was like a 75% drop
Hmm.
in the first week of people coming across the border.
Yeah,
Um,
or trying to come
because
across the border
people
because
get a
they
message.
arrest them there. Yeah,
I did not know about the caravan. I'm surprised to hear that, because
yeah,
I would have thought that they would have realized the the closed for business sign would be out at the border by the time they got here. Um, so we'll be watching for that with great anticipation. But yeah, I mean the numbers have dropped precipitously in the first week alone,
Right.
and will probably continue to drop because it's when you mean what you say and you do something about it, people pay attention and anything. And so, that's the best part. To me, that's the best part of this is they said they were going to do this and now they're doing it. And it's good to see. Um, and what I'm really especially waiting for is once he gets his economic team in place, which is they're in the process of now. And that's the next thing you'll see is, he's talked about the cost of living,
Hmm.
inflation, interest rates, and watch them go tackle that because they all the same way we've seen on the immigration side, specific policies to tackle specific problems and consequences be damned. We said we were going to do this, we're going to do it. And if, people want to go, crying on TV because of it, let them cry. I think they're going to do the same thing on the economic stuff with that same kind of laser focus.
And going in that area, going into kind of our fourth topic is you got some states, you got especially California, that are looking to Trump proof the state. They call it Trump proofing California.
Mm.
And this past week, you've got a couple of different proposals that are being debated over in the California state legislature. And basically, what it does is it's from the Newsom administration, and what he's doing is he's asking for $25 million for possible litigation with the Trump administration, and an additional $25 million in grants to nonprofit groups that will provide immigration support and legal services, especially for those, and they put it for those facing eviction, wage theft, and other types of issues. But the in the testimony that they had on this particular money, so it's $50 million, right, to try to get rid of for lawsuits and to help out immigrants. But you look at this thing and it's like, okay, they don't know what they're going to fight him on, but they know they're going to fight him on something. So they need this $50 million. Some savvy local elected officials began asking some questions that, hey, if we're going to give these $25 million for immigration services or to Trump, or for other litigation, will any of this money be used to defend criminal illegal immigrants who are facing deportation? And at the same time, how are we making sure that, or what are the checks and balances to ensure that the money is used for what's intended, and at the same time that it doesn't go to protect people who've committed these crimes? And the Newsom administration, some of their fellow individuals, and we'll make sure we put the link of the story in our comments area or description down below. They couldn't answer it. They have no idea. And the only response was, "We'll try to get back to you on this." And I bring up this particular issue because here on one side you've got one group of people that have got an agenda and they're ready to roll. Everyone's on the talking points. Here you have in California, they're still trying. They seem like they're still trying to figure out what the heck they want to do, and don't have any of these answers.
It's the fact that they don't have answers to those questions, which are very basic questions that you would
Right.
think if you were preparing someone to go testify in something that you would have answers to those questions, speaks volumes more than anybody could speak. The fact that they don't have those answers speaks more than anybody could speak. And the reality is, they want to they really run a risk here because they want this handout,
Mhm.
but they want to spend money. They want this handout for the federal government, but on the other hand, they want to say, no, you can't do this. No, you can't do that. No, you can't do this. He hasn't done it yet, but at some point in time, he's going to say, look, you want the money? This is what you got to do. I mean, he kind of alluded to it with a couple of things in California before he came out. But, you can't, I mean, first of all, the taxpayers should be like, isn't there something better we can be spending $50 million on
Right.
rather than rather than for lawyers to defend people who are here illegally? I mean, just stop. The show here is called Common Sense in an Uncommon World. Where is the common sense of spending 50 million in taxpayer dollars to provide legal help for people who are here illegally?
Mm-hmm.
Just saying that tells you how uncommon and no common sense there is to this equation.
Yeah.
And the difference now, though, is that they do need to worry about the fact that actions like that will create consequences
Mm-hmm.
for other things
Mm-hmm.
that they may want, need, or expect. That's the new world order. And, they need to be aware that their actions on something like that can have consequences they may
Right.
not like in other places.
Yeah.
So if that's what and unfortunately, the taxpayers of California are the ones that pay for it, both in the beginning by watching 50 million of their tax dollars go to legally protect illegals, and then on the backside where they may need some federal government help, but it's tough coming because of, the stupidity they did in the front, just to try and make a political point.
Right. And it goes into you've got this administration here in California, along with members from both sides saying, hey, we don't want the money that's supposed to go to help out the fire victims to be politicized.
Right.
Yet you've got a hearing, 2 days after, or 2 business days after the president was in town to look at the wildfires, where you've got hearings that are politicizing $50 million to go and sue the Trump administration on something that we have no idea what they're going to sue on. But hey, we need this money for the Department of Justice so that they can potentially sue him for something down the line, for possible litigation. And so, on one hand, don't politicize it. On another hand, you're spending time politicizing something that you have no idea what's going to happen
Well,
or not happen.
the other thing too, though, is, you know what? If you want to do that, if you're a Democrat in the legislature and want to do that, that's fine. Go to crying Selena Gomez and ask her for money. Go to Oprah and ask her for money. Go to all these other people and ask them for money that, feel that it's okay for these illegals to be coming in and doing all of this stuff and disagree with the president. Don't come to the taxpayer and say you have to pay for it. If you think that they deserve some kind of legal defense fund to protect these people from the actions of the Trump administration, there's plenty of deep pockets in California on the left. We've seen it.
Yeah.
Go ask them for the money. Stop putting the California taxpayer in the line of fire here, where they're watching their money that they pay taxes for go to lawyers to defend illegals. And on the same token, when they may need some government help because of something that happened they had nothing to do with, they can't get the help because the federal government is pissed at the state government for trying to pass these bills. Go find the money somewhere else. You really want to defend these people? You really want to defend these fentanyl dealers and these crack dealers and these gangs and everything else? Fine. Go to Selena. Tell her to stop crying and write a check. Go to Oprah. Go to, all the happy people on The View. Tell them to quit talking and start writing the check so that they can they can go to California and sue the Trump administration. Leave the California taxpayer out of it.
And I think it's important to note that the Department, ICE, right, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, they've been solely focused, on going after people who've got criminal records. And so those are the thousands of people that they've arrested up to date from inauguration date to now. And it's kind of funny. You mentioned, go fund something worthwhile or ask them for a check. I want to go back. I want to go back to this thing with Karen Bassett, and I can't imagine what it would have been like for these firefighters who put the hose in the fire hydrant and no water came out.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a little reservoir. It's not little, but it's a reservoir. And I think it's called the San Ynez Reservoir. Now it's made, it was, constructed there, obviously. And it's a local issue. It's not a state issue. It's a local issue. But that thing had some sort of, it needed repairs. and the repairs were about $130,000 repair that it needed, and it has been sitting empty since last February, so February 2024. And that reservoir, which is supposed to provide additional water over the Palisades area, Pacific Palisades, carries 117 million gallons of water, and it was empty. That frustration that you've seen from a lot of the folks there, and the frustration to Karen Bass, and the frustration to local leaders, and the frustration even, he doesn't deserve it on this one, to Gavin Newsom on the water issue, is because that reservoir was empty.
Mm-hmm.
It has been empty since February of last year for a repair that was a $130,000 repair, which I'm sure a lot of the folks who live there, they could have written it out themselves.
I was just going to say, $130,000 repair of something that size really isn't a heck of a lot of money.
No,
And
that goes back into where is the $50 million that we talked about a little while ago, is where the hell is all this money going when you should be, in case of an emergency, as we had right here. I mean, look, I'm not saying that the whole town could have been saved, but at least you would have given our firefighters a fighting chance
right.
to go and protect a couple other structures, to maybe build some sort of defense. But instead, they're standing there watching these flames just engulf the entire area because there's no water coming out of the fire hydrant.
There's no excuse for that. People's heads should roll because of that, because those are public policy decisions that your leaders make.
Yeah.
And they're made at the local level. They're not made in Washington, D.C. Someone somewhere along the chain of command decided in Los Angeles that for whatever reason, that $130,000 was better spent on something else. Well, what was that something else? And what did it achieve? And, people have to look at the mayor and say, is this person doing the best that she can to protect our community? And clearly the answer is no, because your community's on fire. And when a firefighter goes to a hydrant and can't get water out of the hydrant, there's a basic failure that takes place there. So, and to take that and extrapolate it up, please don't tell me how you're going to fix the homeless problem. Please don't tell me how you're going to fix this business problem. Please don't tell me how you're going to fix the tax problem when you can't get water out of a fire hydrant. You failed at that job.
Yeah.
And now you want to tell us you're going to do all these other things. Why in God's name should anybody believe you could do anything but get out of your own way?
And to make matters worse, Mike, and it's a you had the Palisades fire that happened 3 weeks ago now, somewhere along those lines. LA Times has been doing a very good job of pointing out some of these problems, and one of the things they pointed out is that it's not even scheduled. That thing's not even scheduled to get repaired until April. It's like it's $130,000 to fix it now. Granted, I know a lot of the area has already burnt down, but the thing is, go and fix it now. Why are you waiting till April to go get this thing done? I know there's structures that did survive. There's a mall there that survived, but go and fix it now. I mean, they're just waiting until April again.
Again, I'm going to take it a step up. Remember last year we were having conversations. Well, it wasn't last year. It was the year before. We were having conversations about the fact that, what did you have, a $95 billion surplus?
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, okay, forget bonds. Take 15 billion of that 95 billion and create water resources from scratch that'll take less than 10 years to do, that will ensure that all of California has the water that it needs for the environment, for homeowners, for public safety, for farming, for everything. Take the 15 billion and spend it there out of the 95 billion. And now you have an asset that protects you for the next 25 years. But they don't look at it that way.
No.
Instead, what do? Let's give everybody a free ride on the metro system. Well, I mean, a free ride on a metro system, you need a free box of Clorox to go with it. I mean, I don't know why that's so important, but that's the mentality of the way they think on public policy. There is let's do this immediate good rather than this overall good that we would see benefit for. And this is the same way here. This time they got caught with their pants down because there was a fire and they needed that resource. And
Yeah.
that's why I say I don't know, as someone that's been in politics for 40 years, how Karen Bass gets reelected as mayor of Los Angeles when that time comes. She shouldn't even run at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. And kind of let's leave it there. I mean, I know in the next couple of weeks we'll probably have another, 30, 40
Well, I was going to say,
executive.
before we left, I was going to go check online and see if there are any more. I issued, let me just, and just a very serious thing about executive orders before we go.
Mhm.
They don't always work.
Yeah.
I mean, I issued an executive order this morning to my wife, Julie, that said, you shall cook 3 square meals a day for me, hot
Mhm.
meals once a week, and I got to go to the emergency room now because I got hit with a frying pan in the head. So executive orders don't always work, people.
That's a great place to leave it, Mike. Well, give my best to Julie and Brady out there. So, and until next time,
Sounds good.
folks.